Good evening. I'm Perry Schumacher from West Fargo, pinch hitting tonight for Gary Emanis. Gary gets to enjoy the warm weather of Arizona while we go back to winter, I guess. Tonight, as my guest, I've got Doug Sharbono of he's District 11 chair in Fargo, here in Fargo. And welcome to Open Range, Doug.
Yeah, thank you, Perry, for the opportunity to be on your show. You and Gary have been knocking it out of the park lately. It's an honor to be here.
I like to call it serious questions for serious people, and I think you're a serious person. Let's dive right in. Like I said, you're District 11 chair. Tell us a little bit of how you got involved and then maybe the geographical area. Fargo has lots of districts. Maybe you can explain to people what area that covers.
The geographical area starts at the east side of I-29. If you start at the intersection of I-29 and I-94, District 11 kind of proceeds to the northeast of that point. So we're a chevron, a Chevy symbol shape in the district. So it's almost rectangular, but we have a couple little bumps on the bottom and top. We run all the way to the river, Red River of the Red River Valley. And I-94, then it goes north to approximately 13th Avenue South. And there's some bumps that go beyond those boundaries, but that's
You got that
basically
25th Street area and south to 94 over to University Drive all the way over to the river.
yes, yep.
Okay. So it's an interesting dynamic in District 11, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on. North Dakota is full of Republican legislators, as we know. We'll get into how Republican they are in a little bit, but you have three Democrats that serve in the legislature, and that's unique in the state of North Dakota. Tell us a little bit how in 2000, and I think your district is up for nominating new candidates this year, right? Because you're odd number.
Yes, correct. Being an odd number district, we are up for election this year for our legislative candidates.
So as the Republican chair, how do you plan to attack these three Democrats in your district, or what's the game?
Well, our goal is to remain conservative. We want to get conservative legislative candidates elected in 2026. Our motivated district wants to push the needle more conservative in the North Dakota state legislature. A review of any of the voting indexes in the state will reveal that we have a fairly liberally governed state. And if you want to even take the greater chamber voting index, for example, a majority of the legislators in that index that are given a great rating are pushing to spend more of the taxpayer money by that index. The voting index of Legislate, which is another awesome index, it indicates that many of the Republican legislators vote more often with the most liberal member of the legislative body than the more conservative members. And another freedom index that is circulating out there that indicates that many of the Republicans have ratings in the 0 to 40 range out of a possible 100. Whichever voting index you choose to use, the results are that the Republican caucus is trending liberal. So our district wants to maintain and hold on to our platform values. And right now with those indexes, whichever one you want to use, it indicates that the Republicans are doing a poor job of holding on to that.
I mentioned to Gary last week on the show, I think one of the questions, my District 13 also is up for election this year, nominating candidates. And I think one of the questions that should be asked at every district convention this year is if this candidate was in a red state, I'm talking in the Republican caucus here, if this candidate saying they're running as a Republican was in a red state, would they run as a Republican or a Democrat? Excuse me, in a blue state. Let's say they were in Minnesota or Illinois or somewhere in the Northeast. Would they run as a Republican or a Democrat? Are they so convinced of the Republican platform that they would go up and win the state of Illinois and probably lose? But they believe so much in their platform that they'd still run? Or are they just using it as convenience? I think that's a valuable question that should be asked in every legislative district that's up this session.
I think there is a lot of that they're using the party as a matter of convenience to get themselves elected for power. The platform, many of them say that they don't even believe in the platform. I was in a URC, United Republican Committee forum one time, and one of the audience members that was a Republican, they said that they didn't even believe that the platform should be followed. They could come right out and say it.
Jeff Hoverson was on Open Range the other night, and he had a few legislators from, I think it was District 15 on, and they're talking about the same thing, trying to recruit the real Republican that wants to stand up for the platform and how to make that caucus stronger. That's another question I had for you. Do you believe there are factions within the Republican Party that play better in the sandbox together than others? Is that a big thing?
Oh, I think there are. And my answer may surprise you a little bit, or maybe not. I see cooperation when the conservatives are governing. That's what I see. And in 2022, we had the liberal North Dakota GOP chairman. He attacked my legislators when they were running back then in the general election campaign. And he went public with them, and he didn't have his facts right when he was on air on the radio, blasting our candidates, our conservative candidates. He accused one of our candidates of being racist, which just simply was not true. When the liberal segment of the party is in control, yeah, they don't play well in the sandbox. When the conservative faction, if you want to call it, of the party is in control, they do play a little bit better. I really have the utmost respect for our current chairman, Matt Simon. He's just doing a stand-up job, and he takes a lot of flack, and that's part of the job.
So let's compare in your mind the citizen of North Dakota, how red that citizen is compared to what our representatives are. Do you think on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you put the North Dakota public on a scale of conservative? Do they get to a 7?
I was going to say exactly that. I was going to say a 7. We do have a pretty conservative citizenry here in North Dakota. Are they in the know about all the politicians' particular leanings? I don't think that's 100% the case. Sometimes when a politician calls themselves conservative, a lot of the citizens that are busy working hard every day, they don't have time to investigate it, and they just simply accept what they say, that they're conservative. And so I think there's a lot of that goes on, but that's part of the challenge, and that's part of our mission to try to educate.
If we say the North Dakota citizen is at a 7, what would you say the legislature is at? Do we get to a 5?
No, I would rate them at about a 3. I'm sorry.
Oh,
that's just my personal opinion. And they're all good people. Most of them are good people. But as far as what they advance with policy and bills and legislation, yeah, they really could do a vast improvement.
I think that goes for the governor too, not just the legislature, where it's not like we put up the most conservative governors possible.
Yeah, we've had a slew of not so conservative governors. And you could start with even Burgum in 2016 when he won the election. And that didn't work out well for conservatives in the state. And I think we're still dealing with some of the legacy of that. And yeah, and Kelly Armstrong, we're working on him. We'd like to push him a little more conservative, but I guess that's up to him.
What are your views on the term limits thing in the state now?
I think from a purely a ideological standpoint, you got elections as term limits, but I have shifted my position on that over several years, and I am in favor of them right now. I think the term limits are good. When you have cases of the public, if they're a little bit ignorant, let's say, or they don't know about some of the goings-ons in the legislature, it's a good method to get fresh minds in the legislature. And we've really had some really good freshman legislators over the years, and when they hit the ground running, they really do well.
I'm in favor of it too, but I'm concerned it's hard to get the time off the average North Dakotan who's busy working. It seems like it's only a select kind of people, retired people, maybe people that own their own business, well-established, retired teachers. It's hard to find the time to get to Bismarck to serve. So I think we get the biggest talent pool.
Right, and that's a legitimate concern. But I think a worse case is having entrenched members that are pushing liberal values. I think that's the worst case. So I'm still for it.
And you have to weigh the balance. I think that's better. Doug, we're going to dive into my second question. This one's going to take a little bit of editorializing, but bear with me. I've got some deep questions for you as we get to the end. Tragedy struck Minneapolis again last week when an ICE agent shot and killed a woman who was part of an organized protest. She seems to have been a professional agitator who went so far as to send her young children to a charter school in Minneapolis to learn left-wing activism. I'm talking young children. Organized protests have been going on all over the country and, in my opinion, should have been stamped out long ago before something like this would eventually happen. It was just a matter of time before someone died. This recent tragedy got me thinking about the conviction the left has to undo the written laws of our country and deconstruct it. It is a conviction that rivals any religion in our world. It is a conviction so strong that it will get you to go out in the snow to protect those who broke American laws. When you contrast that intensity with the lack of intensity of so many conservatives, we fail to recognize what is at stake. It is stark. There are a majority on our side who won't even get up for church on Sunday if it's too cold outside. Yet the radical left will stop at nothing. Nothing will prevent them from doing what they have to do. Doug, someone must always rule and something will always be worshiped. In this case, the left is evil. It is evil that must rule, and power of government that is worshipped. This is a religious war. It is just that our side does not define religion in the same way as the left does. The zeal of the radical left is aided by the many who get paid to do it professionally. I recently read a book, The Gulag Archipelago, and in there, Alexander Solzhenitsyn says, once you cross over to the threshold of evil, there is no going back. Wearing the mask of morality, justice is a two-part concept. Virtue triumphs and vice is punished. Cross that threshold without return. We Christians live a life of limiting principles. There are things we cannot do. There are things that are unchristian. The left has no limiting principles, only victory. How do we defeat an army that is so committed to the cause of deconstructing America that gays can champion Islam in the case of Gays for Gaza?
Perry, we defeat their army by taking our money back and giving it back to the taxpayer. They function by living off the taxpayer and using their efforts against us and our taxes against us. They fund their causes. Conservatives are generally working very hard. We do not have time to do the foolishness of the left, nor would we want to really do that. So that's basically how we can stop them. We have to cut off the taps to funding their activities. And a lot of their protests, it seems, are paid protests. That was particularly true back in 2020 and 2021, but I think we can see it now with them bringing busloads of people in and paying them.
Do you believe, like I do, that we're now in a zero-sum game? There's got to be a winner and a loser here. I don't know that there's compromise. They're like a child. They lost the election, so now we're gonna throw a tantrum, and we're gonna keep throwing a tantrum until you give us our way.
I would agree with that, Perry. Our side's political and societal success is to their side's detriment. They are 100% punitive to law-abiding conservative citizens when they are in power, and their support systems of bureaucracy and judicial and education are slanted in their direction. If we lose the midterms on the national level, the riots will not stop. They will increase to subdue conservatives.
I saw the other day that a stat, 1,400, when you include the January 6th people, over 1,400 conservatives, Republicans, were arrested under the Biden administration. How bad are things going to get when they win the next time?
I think you would see at least levels of that going on. It probably would vastly increase. It would be my prediction. I hope that's not the case.
People need to realize that there's a lot at stake at this midterm election. And going forward, Trump may just be the start of it, but this has to build to continue. You can't cut it off at its knees before it even really gets started. It is a little messy when people don't volunteer to leave the country and actually fight it. It's going to get messy.
Yeah, it will get messy, and it really emphasizes the point that the Republican leadership needs to really push the get out the vote. We have to approach this midterm like it's a it's an actual presidential election, the way it's playing out, because it's just as important to maintain control in Congress for the Republicans.
Second part of that question, the left cheers communism, wants tin pot dictators kept in power, has gays cheering for radical Islamists, and allows the raping of children for cultural harmony. All these are in direct conflict of what they say they stand for. But they are allies because of one and only one thing. They want to bring the end of the United States of America. These dupes fail to realize the powerful will eventually put them in the gulag, just like you and I will. We are just going first, and they will come after we're done digging the ditches. They will come after. Doug, history may not repeat, but it is currently playing a familiar tune. I think divorce is the only conclusion. What do you think?
Perry, the left has no idea what they're playing with. If you look at the brown shirts in Germany or the useful idiots in the Soviet Union, these people didn't fare well. They killed them after using them. And yeah, and their supposed friends did this. So yes, we will be thrown in the gulag first if that moment were to arrive, and I pray that it doesn't. However, we have two things to get us through the tyranny of the left, and that is we have God. God will carry us through. Will we have difficulties and casualties if this scenario plays out? Absolutely. But God will get us through. And the second item is we have the Second Amendment, and no more needs to be said about that. As far as divorce, yes, I get the sense conservative Americans are already done with the left. We no longer want to waste our time listening to them much or accommodating them.
That's who I follow, are the people that won't even play and that won't let them set the agenda. They just absolutely refuse to let the left set the agenda. People have to realize, go back to the Kavanaugh hearings.
Yeah.
Remember all the lies that were told about that person? Just because he couldn't sit on, because he was against abortion. You can't believe a leftist at all, ever, never, ever. They will lie about everything and just go back to
they were so vicious to Kavanaugh that they had a grown man crying. They were vicious to him and his family. It was just awful.
I wonder if, I just worry because this is cyclical, right? And Democrats will win elections again someday. We hope not in the near future, but what they're going to do censoring us and punish retribution wise should scare the crap out of a lot of people. It's got to get you to the voting booth.
I agree. Yeah. We have to get out and capture that vote. We have to take time off of work. All the conservatives that work hard, we have to take that time and just get to the voting booth. The voting booth would be preferential, but as a backup or second choice, certainly the absentee ballot if you can't take that time off of work. But we have to get out there and we have to get that vote out there.
So you look at what happened in Minneapolis. I go back to the Tea Party days. Compare my Tea Party protests that I helped organize around the state of North Dakota to the protests that the left has organized since Trump won elections. What a stark contrast, right? We left the park cleaner than it was when we got there.
Right. Yeah, and I think you just see differences in people there, really.
What is this about? I think it's entirely about votes and the census, how they defeat America. These people that are here illegally count in the census. So that makes for more representation. They say that if we didn't count illegals, Democrats would have 24 less representatives in the United States Congress. And now, so here where it's tied, basically, Republicans have a huge majority, and that's what this is about. It's about, and then cheating at the ballot box. These people, you can't tell me that they're not voting on presidential elections and city and statewide elections.
Yeah, and a lot of these states, what they do is when they give these illegal aliens a driver's license, which that is a strange concept to me, but when they give them a driver's license, there's an application there's a checkbox on the application where you have to select that box to not have a absentee ballot sent to your home.
You saw in Minneapolis last week how they instantly jumped to conclusions, and this gal was just shot was shot from the side and there was no reason for it. I bet, and then they start lecturing us about how we should act. But I bet you tons of these people cheered when Charlie Kirk was shot. I got a hunch.
Oh, 100%. And in fact, more they really were celebrating over his death. And even when Trump got shot, they
Yeah.
were wishing that shot was 3 inches,
Further to the, yep.
further towards him.
It would have been tragic. And yeah, so I don't take any moralizing lectures from anybody on the left. Doug, we're off to question 3. Steve Dason says we are not a nation of laws, but rather a nation of political will. It is not in the not so distant past, we had a social compact where at times at the most basic level, we agreed to follow laws that our elected officials passed. All sides agreed to do this. The left proves every day that they no longer accept that social compact by deciding which federal laws they will follow and those that they won't. Frustration has reached epic levels because no one ever seems to be held accountable for breaking federal law. It may be because there is no real punishment that the law breaking continues. Can you name a Democrat who has been held accountable since maybe Anthony Weiner?
Perry, I could name 2. You have Harvey Weinstein. He abused the girls and women around him.
Yep.
And then you have Senator Ray Holmberg. Based on his legislative record, he was an establishment Republican, but according to the record, he voted very nearly a Democrat. So I would put him in that category too, that he got his hand slapped. But you're right. There is no justice, it seems like, for the left when they do things wrong, unless it's really egregious.
This morning, Trump put out a tweet that Minnesota better watch out or he's going to get serious and stamp out these protests and going after ICE officials. And rather than talking about it, he actually needs to do something. I think in his first term, because he let that stuff go in Minneapolis and around the country, I think that hurt him. He should have stamped that out quicker. I think that cost him at the ballot box.
Oh, 100%. When I have heard articles or read articles where, was it February 2nd, if they don't clean up their act over there in Minnesota, that he's going to cut off the federal funding to the state, he could place pressure on them.
It needs to be more. The holding of riots, blocking ICE officials from doing their jobs, attacking federal facilities, and chanting death to federal officials are just symptoms of a disease. That disease is the hatred of this country. I have no expectation that there is the political will on our side to root this out. An example of this rot was a white woman in Minneapolis shown on video last week saying she feels wrong for paying her respects to Renee Good, the person that was shot, because she's white and she's privileged. This stupidity is so high in our water table now that contamination has reached our next door neighbors, especially if your neighbor is a college-educated white female. The amount of toxic empathy and self-loathing is incredible. What the hell can you do with a person who projects that much self-guilt to such an extent, but not to others, but not themselves? She's also white, but she cannot offer any sympathy. She fears offering sympathy for somebody that died because she's white. What do you do with this stuff?
Well, our institutions, which have been controlled by the left for many decades, have left their undesirable mark. They have destroyed critical thinking, and it seems to have now hit a critical mass. The only thing to do is start, like I said earlier, cutting the money off that the taxpayer is fueling some of these people with. Then I think the ship will right itself. Doge was such a great start. Doge, handled by Elon Musk. It was a shame our own senators could not favorably to permanently require it. That was just recently. That was a little disappointing. But the key is to cut off the left's money that they suck out of us to pay for their programs and ideology.
It was said during the Obama years, don't let a crisis go to waste. You see we're on this precipice here that this could possibly turn into another George Floyd event here in Minneapolis.
Oh, yes. Yeah. It's just a matter of time where some scenario with law enforcement, them doing their jobs, ICE particularly, them doing their jobs, something will happen and it's gonna just explode. And the one good thing is that so far, I think it's only been what was it been one casualty, and
Yep.
if they had been a different race, it would have blown up. But
Good point.
Yeah.
You said it earlier in segment one, I think, but a spiritual awakening is really the only way to solve this. When you have that much self-loathing and toxic empathy for people, spiritual awakening and finding your way back to God and Christian principles is really the only way that I think this gets solved. We're seeing it happen, but it has to happen to a greater extent.
Yes, and that has to occur on an individual level for massive change to occur.
Do you think we talked about possible George Floyd and Trump not acting strong enough. There's chances here that this neuters his term here before it gets started here in year number 2. If this spreads throughout the country, right now it hasn't hit. Even like Portland, I haven't seen anything in the news that's been too drastic in Portland. It seems to be limited mostly to the Minneapolis area.
Yeah, I think there's a potential it could spread. The one thing working in our favor is, like I had mentioned earlier, is the Doge work where they had cut off some of that funding early on. I think that is hampering them. If they had that money available, they would have been spending a lot more to have these riots.
Let me go to question 4. President Trump announced last week that Venezuelan oil will be under the control of America, with millions of barrels being sold at market value for the benefit of both countries. A few days later it was in the news that Secretary Rubio is telling senators that we indeed intend to purchase Greenland. I think there was actually a meeting yesterday about Greenland at the White House. Last week, I suggested to Gary that publicly, though it will never be said, maybe the United States is becoming empire builders. When you're $38 trillion in debt, the only way out is to grow the pie, because we have no appetite to stop spending like you and I think we do. Our elected leaders, we saw with Doge, they don't have the courage to do it. A president doesn't have the courage to do it. So the only way to do it is to grow the pie. So maybe, what do you think about now all of a sudden Greenland? I think we're going to see Cuba change in the next year. He's already put those people on notice, those leaders, communist leaders on notice. What do you think of an empire America, or is Perry dreaming?
I think the Monroe Doctrine is still in play. We got to protect our backyard here. And that's the writing of Venezuela is a process. We're at about step 3 with the removal of Maduro. And we have about 3 more steps to go. He had or has thousands of little generals running around all over the place. It's still raining from what I've read. And someday we will prevail there, but patience is going to be required. Greenland is another example of where we're going to have a little patience. I think that's a good endeavor. I was surprised when I first heard it that it almost seemed absurd how Trump brings his policies out. And not in a bad way, but it surprised me when I first heard that. And then I thought about it. I was like, that's actually a pretty good idea, because Denmark, they really don't have, it didn't seem like they had much care with them. And we do have a military base there, or 2. I don't know. I think it's just 1. So we have an interest with that body of land. And I thought that was good that he jumped into it. But when Trump first floated the idea of that, the people of Greenland, when I was looking at it on the news and whatnot, it seemed like they were excited to join the U.S. And since then, I think there's some other powers that have gotten to them and twisted their minds a little bit. And now there seems to be a kind of a mixed response. However, when Europe needs us really badly, that's when we will gain Greenland.
Good point there. I want to modify my reasoning. I think it's twofold now. It's not just because we're so far in debt that we have to grow our economic pie. I think it's a defensive empire as well. You made the point, getting China out of our hemisphere. Doug, are you a Packer fan or a Viking fan?
I don't watch much professional football.
Well,
and probably more leaning towards the Vikings just because they're close. And
for this exercise, we're going to propose that you're a Packer fan today, okay?
Okay.
I want to make an analogy. To me, what's going on here is like a divisional football game. When the Vikings play the Packers, America and China, the Packers are China, okay? The Packers are China. So when they play each other, it's not just one game. It counts twice. It counts twice. There's a winner and a loser. And if America wins, China loses. So China has to beat America twice to get ahead of us. If they beat us once, they only tie us. So I think that's a lot what's going on here. What do you think of that analogy?
I think that's a pretty good analogy. And we just have to keep up the fight and stake out our claim to our hemisphere. And China has been exceedingly aggressive in trying to be in our hemisphere. They're highly involved in Venezuela, and they have some kind of access to the Panama Canal right now. And I think we need to change that.
Yes, there's no reason they need to be involved here. It's our area. We're talking serious questions. Doug, before the break, we were talking about the Western Hemisphere and the American economic pie. Going a little deeper there, everything costs a lot. I want to give you a stat here I saw the other day. Do you realize that the median age of a homeowner is now 59 years old? And I saw another one this morning. Last year, 71% of realtors did not sell a home the entire year. What are your thoughts on the affordability and those and the ability of a young person just beginning his life, maybe he's out of college or out of the home? And it's certainly different than when me and you were at that stage of life, isn't it?
Yes, we have done a disservice to the young people in our country. We keep growing government, and we keep printing money, and we have ever-increasing environmental regulations, which thankfully have slowed down since Trump is in place, but some of them are still there. And that does not make for the young people getting a house that's reasonably priced. All of that adds cost to them. They have to basically go into slavery practically to pay for their house. They genuinely cannot afford to get into the market at some of these current pricings. And there are many apologies that should be made at the local, state, and federal level for the damage that some of our leaders have done in causing all this with the regulation and the printing of money and the growing of government.
I'll tell you what, dumping all that COVID money into the kitty didn't help at all, just printing it out of thin air and dumping it into the economy. And we're paying for it big time right now. One of the arguments I heard online was that a gentleman said, whoever said that it's the American dream to own a home? And I disagreed with that. I think it is. There's nothing more special than opening that door after you go through the closing and going, this is mine. This property is mine. We can get into property tax a little later, but there's something special to that. But the other things, it was a way for you and I and our generation and the generations before us to accumulate a little wealth because that home appreciated in value. It didn't go crazy like it did with 3% interest rates, because then it made it affordable to everybody. But it was a way of accumulating wealth in owning something, right?
Right. It is the American dream. It is our castle. You talk about the castle doctrine with the Second Amendment issues, and this is our place. This is what we strive for as an American citizen. The bulk of the average American's wealth goes into their own home, and that's their largest investment. Yeah, it's sad to see that a lot of the younger generation cannot even afford to get into a home.
I always say the baby boomer generation is going to go down in history as the worst in the history of mankind. I'm at the end of it. I think we're roughly around the same age, so you probably are too. But the selfishness of not leaving a better country, it's the first time that's ever going to happen. And I just feel I see it in my kids. They're in that age, early 30s. It is hard to get by nowadays. Groceries, everything else costs so darn much money. I can't even imagine going to the grocery store with a family of 5 or something like that and having to pay the meat bill to buy hamburger at the grocery store. I don't know how we fix this. I think Trump is slowing the growth, but it's going to take a while for your hourly pay to catch up to these rate increases that we've had in the cost of everything.
Yes, and if there's a large hourly increase, which there should be better compensation, but the market drives that. But what happens if that has to go up? That just adds to the inflation level.
We're in a vicious circle here. I even
Yes.
saw the other day that you can buy DoorDash on credit.
Yeah.
Some things are upside down. Charlie said the only way out of this is for Americans young Americans to get married and have lots of children. That's what happiness. And then we've got to build more homes. We've got to, I don't think interest rates should go too low because that distorts the market. And that's how we got into this problem. But we've got to make homes more affordable for our children.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree, Perry. The interest rates, if we go too low, that just adds to the inflation levels. So yeah, we have to be a little cautious with that. And
The other side of the angle is I read yesterday, in 5 years, we're going to reach the first point in American history where more white people die than are born. We see what's happening in the countries of Europe, Spain, France, where they have less than one child per two. Eventually, you get taken over, you get conquered. And our country is changing demographically because of not having babies.
right, I agree with, that's not a good trend to be in. A third of our children in America are basically aborted too. And everybody likes to talk about workforce and all that, but we throw away a third of our workforce before they even start.
I made the comment once before, we might have had another Abe Lincoln or George Washington, but that person probably was aborted in that 50 million abortions that we've had. We could have had we might have cured cancer. That the person that cured cancer might have, but never got a chance to be alive.
That's right. And abortion is so easy now with the pills. And granted, North Dakota has it outlawed, but I understand that the over-the-counter medication that's available in other states is still there for North Dakotans to access and use.
Last question for you, Doug. President Trump has spent his first year trying to reconfigure this economy and reignite it. While there are positive signs, progress is slow. Other parts of his agenda are also stalled by a Republican Congress. In 2025, only 47 bills passed Congress. Do you think this is on purpose by a Republican legislature, both in the House and Congress? That I would say supermajority of them are not necessarily Trump fans. Just like we see in the state of North Dakota, I think it's purposefully stalled.
Yeah, I agree. Any kind of legislation requires work, and I just don't think that our Republican Congress is wanting to work for Trump. They just do the bare minimum and only when pushed real hard.
I think they want to get him to the midterms and then he's a lame duck and then we're on to the next one. I want to read a statement made by GOP Senator John Curtis. I don't know what state he's from. He said a couple weeks ago, all of us need to wake up every morning, look in the mirror and say, what am I doing specifically today to make all our immigrants feel more welcome? When you have friends like that, who needs enemies?
Yeah. Yeah, that's just appalling. I'm not happy with Congress at all with what they're up to, and they do not give Trump the support he needs to get his job done. And however, what do we expect? It was obvious to me on the day of January 6th, 2021, that it was a setup for Trump and his followers, and it was very painful to watch even our own delegation criticizing Trump. And I had my Trump flag and Appeal to Heaven flag up in the bluest area of North Dakota during the dark times of 2021. And now all of a sudden, and when he is winning, his previous critics are now MAGA.
Yeah.
But we know they're real stripes. And
yeah, it's not a sincerity. It's a politician. The thing is, maybe you're not passing bills because the Congress is so close, the House of Representatives is so close, but you could be bringing bills to the floor that make Democrats vote against certain things, which
Right.
is another way of being able to go to the campaign trail and point that out to people. But
Exactly.
you're not even
Exactly.
forcing them to take any hard votes.
Yeah, you have to put people on record. And, that's very important for the next cycle when you can make that an issue and bring that to the attention of the American people.
He's a riddle wrapped inside an enigma for me because he backs most of these incumbents. Yet they stall his legislation. It's different than Reagan. Reagan used to put pressure, he'd go to the American public over the Congress's head through the media and put pressure on them. And Trump doesn't seem to do that until we get to the government shutdown point, which
Yeah,
we're nearing again in the next couple of weeks.
I think Trump needs to go to the American people and speak to them just like Reagan did. I think that's because having others carry your message for you doesn't always work.
I think the biggest thief of them all is Graham there from South Carolina. He's just chums with Trump. But boy, there's no way they the same thing.
Yeah, Lindsey Graham, yeah, he is, I don't trust him. And I think his military stances are pretty poor as well.
Doug, we thank you for coming on this week with Open Range. I appreciate you showing up. Good luck in District 11. We got to get busy. We got to get more conservatives elected to the legislature.
Absolutely. Thank you, Perry.